So, what is the solution for the second problem? C.
If I remember, it's 1800, 3600, and minus 1800.
What is that?
Something 1000 something for 0.25 and for 3000 something, and for it is coming negative.
For 1.5?
It's coming negative, sir. Negative.
Yes. Anybody else?
Sir, give a minute, I'll try again.
We were discussing this line balancing is an issue we encounter in the final assembly of any mass production system. In tune with the amount of demand that is there. So the basic input for designing any line, mass production line, is the takta time. So once this takta time you calculate based on what is the how many working hours are there per day, what is the daily demand, and based on the and also this takta time is and also you should also know what is the assembly sequence, and for this assembly sequence you have to draw a network diagram which we have. So here you can see that this production line, like where you have workstation 1, workstation 2, right? You have workstation 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, right? So and normally in an ideal, most of the workstation should total time that they take in each workstation should not cross the takta time. So, and each workstation there can be 1 or 2 or even 4 tasks. You club 3 or 4 tasks as into one workstation. Like a task may be lifting the tire, mounting the tire, and fixing the tire onto the axle, putting the nut, fitting with the nut. Tire might consist of that may be done in one workstation, which may have some subtask, like we call it as task times. You know, is you try to that slogan always works. Divide the work, multiply the output. Here we took the even example of our Henry Ford, right? So, like if he is taking around if you the total amount of assembly from 1.5 hours. But if you do that Henry Ford might have used around 135 workstations to realize one at a takt time of 40 seconds. So here we did because we calculated this, gave the example of how we end up doing it. So and then how you try to assign tasks to each workstation, and then finally if you want to know how well you have balanced the all the workstation times, the formula is given here, that is um, time by actual number of cycle time. So if efficiency is unsatisfactory, then using a different decision rule, or you try such that you get a better balance. So here we have taken one like a model J wagon is assembled on a conveyor belt 500 wagons, 420 minutes, and the assembly steps and times for the wagon are given in the following table. Number of workstations subject to cycle time and precedence constraints. So these are all precedence constraints, right? That means for A there is no precedent activity to be completed. Similarly for D also there is no precedent activity. Whereas for B, A has to be, like for example, that means unless you position the rear axle, you can't insert a rear axle, right? See, tighten the rear axle. So for that, first of all, you have to insert the rear axle. So for this, in this toy assembly, so like this, we have around k number of tasks, and for each task there is a detailed breakup of how many seconds you take. So finally, we have found that to assemble a toy, you need 195 seconds, and you have to turn out. Hello, you have to turn out how much? Like for every 50 seconds, you have to turn out one toy, right? And we are trying to find out what are the theoretical number of workstations that are needed to complete one toy at the rate of 50 seconds. 50 seconds you want to turn out. So this 195 is split across 4 workstations, theoretical minimum. But you may end up taking more than that because of not able to exactly balance all the tasks across the. So this is how you have done it. So this is the network diagram. You have converted your this table, this to a network form in a network representation, so that you will know like how the sequence technological precedence is happening. That means, like for example, you can't allocate C activity in the first workstation because you can't start C unless A and B are completed. So that's why how to prioritize allocating tasks to each workstation, this will give a kind of bird's eye view. So this is how, like, finally we have found that the we ended up taking actual number of workstation to be 5 instead of 4. So thereby we got a very poor efficiency of 77%. See, 90% could be a better one, right? So the balanced delay means it is nothing but it is reflecting the inefficiency of the percentage inefficiency of the line. So this is how like we ended up doing this. So how we try to improve the balance. So Anyway, we will come to that before we finish up this. So, what are the answers for this? C?
100 and minus 1800.
1200? Uh,
1800 pieces,
uh,
and for 1.5 it is not possible.
yes, yes, it is not possible. So, to give a pictorial view of that, let me. So here I will share the. Are you able to see my whiteboard?
No,
How you are-
sir.
Oh, okay, okay, wait, wait. So this is how we solve this problem. Those who are not able to understand. So here, what we are doing here is uh, okay. So how we said, like, whereas P here represent the average profit you want unit. So this is nothing but M1x minus M2x. M1 is the selling price, and the M2 is nothing but the variable cost per unit. And whereas P is nothing but the profit per unit. So M1 minus M2, that is, anyway, M1, M2 are already given, 5.5 and 4.5. And C is also given, that is fixed cost. So what we have to find out is what should be the minimum volumes that you have to achieve to get to have a margin of 2.25 rupees per unit. Actually, to get this, so you can only contribute around 0.75 to recover your fixed cost if you want to have a compulsory 25 paise per unit. So thereby what happens is, normally you don't get like, normally the break even point here is, it is exactly how much? 900, right? This is the break even point, right? But if you have,
Yes, sir.
if at all, like,
Nothing, sir. Yes.
if at all, like, you want to have a profit of 0.25, so that means here you have to produce around x is equal to 1200, so that on the average per unit you get 25 paise margin. So that is how you have to solve this problem. Why whereas for the last issue, here we are getting x minus 900 is equal to 1.5, 1.5x. So you end up having minus 0.5x is equal to 900, which is very, that means you can't make any profit if you want a margin of 1.5. So, which is an impossible one. So, he can't think of having a profit of 1.5. So, suppose if you say like he wants a profit of one rupee for every on the average, then what is the answer?
Sir, pardon?
If he wants a profit of 1 rupee for every unit he produces,
Infinity.
so he has to. The answer is infinity. Okay, so that is how like you have to solve this problem. Okay, hope you have understood. So here now, let us go back to our main. So so now the issue is here. Uh, are you able to see my screen? No.
Yes, sir.
We can see.
So here what we see are hearing is, so as this statement says, ever often the longest required task defines the shortest possible workstation cycle time for the production line. So if some of the task can be more than the takt time, there can be a situation where normally workstation time normally be equated to takt time, but and in each workstation there can be 2-3 tasks, right? So, but sometimes what happens is sometimes a particular task can be more than the workstation cycle time or more than this takt time. So in that case, what happens is then you have to search for certain solutions, because your goal is to produce as per the takt time. And here one of the tasks are more than one of the tasks is more than the takt time. In that case, you cannot achieve the production target. So what we have to do? The possible solution would be split the task, share the task, use parallel workstations, right? Use a more skilled worker, work overtime, or redesign the product. So some of these solutions can, so if you can spread the task, so divide the work so that it can be split into 2 tasks, and then one task is assigned to one workstation, another task is assigned to another workstation. So that could be one problem. That could be one solution. Then share the task. That means pass on the certain minor things like to other workstation. Then use parallel workstations. So you put 2 workers, two people working simultaneously on the same task, so that you can quicken the task. And use a more skilled worker. So there are certain people who are very, very efficient, right? Some people do very fast. So select a worker who can do that, and then work overtime. See, work overtime is can be a solution, but how far that is feasible, See that guy, maybe like this guy, he should start his shift 1 hour ahead and 1 hour after the shift. That is what we mean by work overtime, so that he will clear all the backlog uh, inventory that is building up before his workstation. Or another thing, best thing is redesign the product. So sometimes like we have certain techniques called design for manufacturing. So using that technique, DFM we call it as uh, design for manufacturing and assembly, DFMA, invented by certain guy called Boothroyd and Associates. So this guy came up with this. So here, redesign the product, work over time. So all these solutions can be looked at to solve this bottleneck issue in the assembly line. So now coming to next issue is this say for example function layout or process layout, work center layout design. It is a format in which similar equipment or functions are grouped together, such as all lathes in one area and all stamping machines in another. So this is normally functional layout is followed for job order production system. What are the some of the familiar job order production systems that we have discussed as examples?
Sat a telescope.
Huh? That is a project type telescope.
Shipbuilding.
Huh?
Shipbuilding.
BHL does job order.
BHEL. You take BHEL, if you go there, everything is in a functional layout because they produce different types of generators, different types of boilers as per the customer's requirement. Like one boiler may support 100 megawatt thermal power station. Another boiler may need 500 megawatt. So no boiler. Sometimes boiler designs have to be um, a bit modified as per the customer's requirement for certain kind of able to handle certain kind of fuels, certain kind of water. There are certain customized operations. So here, if you go to BHEL Ramachandrapuram in Hyderabad, like you will see this kind of layout where all the different kind of lathes are placed in one place, and then milling machines at one place, grinding, gear hobbing machines, all these things. So, so what you do is in this layout, like in fact, like NIT Warangal also, you can take in one way a functional layout. Overseas is also a kind of factory, na? NIT Warangal.
Workshop, every lathe machine is placed at one place.
Huh?
Yes, sir. In a workshop also, every lathe machine are placed in a line and type of machines are
I'm not
placed.
talking about workshop itself. Even the institute itself is a
Department.
production system. Na? See, NIT Warangal is also a production system. What under what category this NIT Warangal comes?
Service.
Service, right? So, what are the products here?
Knowledge students.
All these students, right? So if you go to get food, you go to hostels. To get to attend classes, you come to here. To have some banking issues, you go to bank. And then so the products here, they don't. You are not. You are not operating in a mass production line. You are operating in a batch type. Like we here, but only thing is here, day by year on year, the batch size is increasing. So it is a kind of batch type production system, batch order, or like because you are divided into sections, and then a single teacher comes to all of you. So there is no individualized coaching. It is not a job order type production system. It's a batch type. But like here, but the layout is a bit functional type in the sense. So you have an academic area, you have a games area, you have a residence area, right? So, so here, so actually, what should be the criteria for designing your layout?
Quality.
You want to evolve a very efficient layout for NIT Warangal. What you do for that? What should be your
Analyze
criteria?
like how many people will be using the layout at the same time. Like at the time, how many people will be using?
See, that is okay. See, we have designed, like for example, we have good amount of classrooms. So, see, any classroom can accommodate up to 60 people or 70 people. And then the banks have, maybe banks may not able to accommodate all of you at in 60 people in the bank. But fortunately, no one has the same kind of, there you go at an individual level. Like banks have to give you, like that doesn't work in a batch mode. It goes in a individual level. Fortunately, most of you have stopped going to bank because with net banking, I think you are able to do whatever you want with your account, right? Right from booking cinema tickets to reservations, everything, right? So actually, if you truly look at the criteria for fixing the facilities like academic area, residence area, dining area, and then sports.
According to the
Actually,
schedule of students.
huh?
According to the schedule of students, the way they go and all.
Hmm.
For example, when we are taking some lathe based company,
Hmm.
first planing operation should be done. So planing should be placed first, and after that, some succeeding operation equipment should be there, and like that.
See, unfortunately, you are handling human resource, and here there is nothing like a fixed schedule for except you have class schedule, right?
I'm
Actually,
saying, for example, a student
uh,
morning will be like exercise, jogging, walking, something like that. So some walking area should be there. After that, mess.
mm,
After that, academic section. Again after
mm,
that, mess. And again after that, academic section. Again after
mm,
that, some playing ground or something
mm,
like that. There is a
yeah,
schedule, no sir. Periods. I mean,
yeah,
class periods may
yeah,
be different, but academic section will be in particular time only, no?
yeah. Actually, with the criteria for to find out optimal layout for NIT Warangal, actually NIT Warangal is not a very optimally designed one because we are the first in the NITs, right? This is the NIT Warangal is the first institution which was set up as part of the REC or NIT.
1969.
So they have not planned it well. In the sense, see, most of the services required by students, see, the average distance per day a student should travel to get various facilities. Actually, if it is an ideal layout, functional layout, the total average distance traveled by each student should be minimal. That should be the criteria. Say, for example, you take, for example, bank is on one side, post office on other side, barber is sitting on some other side. So all the services are very, very scattered in NIT Varangal. Canteen is on one side, and then you have food street on at some other place. So it is all not like on a, see, even though if you want to look in a positive way, what happens is you are putting indirectly some kind of exercise into the physical exercise for the student, because you so that at least because of the scattered facilities he can travel more and then do some exercise. But actually, in when it comes to inanimate objects, what happens is the total travel made by every component or product should be minimum. Similarly, if we carry that concept here, what happens is, like, here we have to evolve a layout where the total distance traveled by on the average by each student should be minimal. Say, for example, if you take some of the new NITs, they keep most of the services at a central place. In the sense, like if you go to NIT Tiruchirappalli, so every service is centrally placed, even the faculty as well as for the students. Like, for example, canteen, post office, banking, and then barber, then dry cleaning, Xerox machines, everything is so. In one go, a student can get all the services at one point. Whereas in a native Varangal, you don't see that. For banking, you have to go to the main gate. For the post office, you have to go directly opposite to the other end of the uh, layout. And then, like food street is some other place. And then, so like that, it is very, very scattered services. So, whereas if it has to be optimal, like you, for that anyway, you have to do some kind of studies, statistical, what do you call, studies you have to do and see, take like what is the average walking distance done by student to various, what is the frequency with which he visits a bank, what is the frequency per month, what is the frequency with which he visits post office, barber, dry cleaning, after counting all those things, then based on the layout we have here, like for example, our campus is around 240 acres, right? So based on that, we try to evolve a good layout. So normally in a functional or process layout, the criteria is the any component or product should travel a minimum distance before it completes all its operations. Why we normally keep this idea is, why we keep this criteria as the number one criteria is because there are certain, what you call, value added activities, non-value added activities. And one of the non-value added activities is transportation and inspection. So transportation, because it is a kind of necessary evil. You have to minimize it, right? So what we do is how to reduce. Because, like, if you can do a particular operation in one go, that is good. Like if you can do all the operations needed for using a machining center, that is a beautiful. But unfortunately, sometimes cost, some other criteria might prevent you to buy a machining center. Instead, because you want to have a general layout, so that you can accommodate every size, every customized component. So here in the criteria we use in functional layout to arrive at optimal layout is uh, the total distance traveled by a component before it realizes its final shape should be minimal. So that's why, because the less the travel, the less the cost automatically. So naturally, uh, that will improve your production efficiency. So here you can say, like, here we are taking a small example, very simple example. See, normally in practice you don't see such a straightforward kind of layout. So here we have a loading dock, and then so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of, and you have 80 feet by 160 feet by 80 feet layout. So flow between work centers. So here between 1 and 2. Uh, so he is taking only the total trips that is happening between, um, for example, work center 1, shipping and receiving, right? Plastic molding and stamping, metal forming, right? So, and then sewing, a small tie assembly. Fifth department is the small tie, large toy assembly, painting, and mechanism assembly, right? So this is the layout, and you find here that the flow between work centers is like between 1 and 2 and 2 and 1 is 175 trips that are happening, number of moves, and between 1 and 3, 50. So what should be our criteria here is, when we redesign the layout, if there is a maximum number of interaction, like for example, there is a 175 trips are happening between 1 and 2 and 2 and 1, and similarly between 1 and 6 also 200 trips are happening. So we try to similarly 180. This is 3 between 3 and 8. So and similarly, like 5 and 8 also there is a, and maximum interaction is between 6 and 7. So we try to keep them together if they are not together in the existing layout, right? So using this is called inter work center flow, right? So this may be happening. These number of trips may be happening per day or per month, right? Whatever criteria you have chosen, right? And then what you do is you come up with a um, what do you call, you converted that into dollar cost, right? And then say now this is the improved layout, like uh, so that the total number of layouts, the most interacting ones are kept side by side, and most non-interacting ones are kept a bit far away. All right. So, like for example, large toy assembly and then painting are put beside, so that the total travel distance is minimized. So here, what is happening here is like sometimes you between the departments it can be if they are very far away, you try to put them together, right? So anyway, this particular technique is we will be discussing in depth when we move to productivity and work study uh, chapter. But only thing that you should keep in mind is that normally in a functional layout, you try to put the departments which are interacting very frequently as near as possible, and those departments, unless you have certain special constraints. See, normally most of the, for example, like loading and unloading department, that way you may be moving a bit on the periphery side rather than inside, because for the convenience sake. Whereas, for example, welding section, because of those arc welding, like the workers they get exposed to a lot of that arc welding light. So you should normally that section should work in isolation. So most of the plant layouts are we can call it as constrained optimization. I mean, you can't shift the most just like that. Like for example, here you have a loading dock, right? So that means like this loading dock, maybe they have it has an interaction with final assembly or something like that. So final assembly maybe have to come here, or the incoming. So here, those departments which have to be regularly in touch with the loading and unloading, they maybe have to be kept at the end. So like this, you have sometimes you may not have a full flexibility to interchange all the department as per the frequency of interaction. Some departments you may not able to move because, like for example, like you may sometimes you may be constrained to move 1 to 5 because one may need a direct access to a loading dock, right? So what we do in functional layout is like we try to reduce the total travel of or total travel trips per month or per day or per year. So similarly, if at all like we have to evolve a better layout for NIT Warangal also, what we do is we have to first of all find out what is the frequency with which students attend various facilities, right? What is the average distance they travel per day, and see like whether we can reduce the some of the travel time of the average travel time of the students to get various facilities during their stay in the campus. Okay, so that is how like we try to um, improve a functional layout. And anyway, like as part of uh, if you take so these are the major areas. Anyway, one more production type of production system is the project type, which where we are going to devote a complete chapter on it, right? That is project management. And whereas what is left out of now in the various types of production systems that we have discussed till now?
Project type?
Project type, anyway, we are going to discuss as a separate chapter.
Batch type.
Batch type.
Batch type is left. So actually, 90% of the production systems belong to batch type of production systems, and that's why we have a separate subject called PPC to handle it. So the most of the ERP software or enterprise resource planning softwares, the so-called JIT, just-in-time production systems, most of them belong to batch type. So the so-called PPC, production planning and control, around 80% of that subject in PPC, which is being offered as an elective for you, but whereas for the new batch which is entering this year, we have made it as compulsory PPC. That is operations planning and control. We called it. So that's why I'm not dealing uh, that batch type of production system issue, because that is a huge task. So we discuss about scheduling, then we discuss about setup time reduction, aggregate planning. Oh no, so many issues are there. So we are confining only to line balancing and um, functional layout and the break-even analysis here as part of production management. So we will discuss. So we will stop here with regard to our uh, production management. Uh, what we will do is we will go for the new chapter, that is just 1 minute. So we will move to new chapter, which is a very interesting chapter, because every mechanical engineer should worry about this. Right? What is that issue? Every mechanical
Productivity.
huh?
Productivity.
Productivity, that is the biggest headache every mechanical engineer should worry about. So just 1 minute, I'm just sharing. Are you able to see the?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
So what is this productivity? So productivity, it is defined something like this. So here, what we are seeing here is productivity is a common measure of how well a country, industry, or business unit is using its resources or factors of production. So this is and if you talk about productivity of a country, India is not doing well, and I think we discussed this in the beginning of our subject, right? So
Yes.
how country's productivity is normally measured?
GDP.
It's not simply
GDP.
GDP. We call it as per capita GDP.
Per capita income. And everything.
Per capita GDP. That means what is the on the average, what is the goods and services each citizen is producing in a country? What is the dollar value? What is the dollar value of the goods and services a country is producing? That is indirectly gives a. It is a common way to find out the productivity of a country. And now, if you take industry, say industry again, there are each industry follows their own productivity measures. Say, for example, uh, how well a mobile company like what is the for example, you want to compare the between Geo and Airtel. So normally one indicator can be ARPM. ARPM means average revenue per month for each what do you call customer. So people use various ways. So business unit, say for example, like some like for example, like how productive a particular restaurant is. That means you find out like what is the average number of meals served by each worker or server. That may be an indicator of productivity of each server. All right, or what is the per square footfalls of a particular retail outlet. Like for example, like uh, Reliance Fresh. If they want to find out what is the productivity of each shop, they use various parameters. One of the parameters could be like what is the average sales or revenue they are getting per square foot of the premises that they have hired. That means they are able to use more amount of sales for a given square foot of area that they have rented there. So productivity can be like in various forms, and sometimes it is very difficult to measure also scientifically, because there are so many other factors, tangible and intangible factors can be there. And but what happens is, say for example, with respect to even per capita GDP, there is a criticism in the sense it doesn't really take into account the psychological pressure the people might be facing to achieve a given amount of per capita GDP. Like for example, even low per capita GDP countries, some of the countries are, their happiness index is far above than the some of the most advanced countries like US. Like uh, some of the exceptions can be, any idea?
France.
Huh? One of the exceptions is Bhutan. Bhutan, in fact, their even though their per capita GDP is not good, but it seems the most of the people in Bhutan are happy. They're uh, because everything is environmentally friendly. There is a good governance. It is, fortunately, India is also doing its best to keep it safe from China. What is that? Great resignation. Somebody has. So here, what we are seeing is that uh, Finland, huh? Yeah, yeah. See, that is what I am seeing. So here, sometimes productivity alone may not tell the entire story, but for 90 or 80% of the time, it has a reasonably depicts the situation, right? So the productivity is defined in a very simple. The formula is very simple. Productivity is equal to outputs by inputs. So to increase the productivity, we want to make this ratio of outputs to inputs as large as practical, and it is a relative measure. right? There is no absoluteness here. Like just like a temperature, we don't have an absolute scale here. And productivity may be expressed as partial measures, multi-factor measures, or total measures, right? So what is that? What we mean by this? Examples of partial measures is like here you can see that partial measure may be output per labor, output per capital, output for materials, output for energy. So these are all partial measures. In a way, like we are saying, labor productivity, capital productivity, materials productivity, energy productivity. So you can measure productivity on each individual input. Multi-factor productivity means you can use a combination of input, like for example, output by labor, capital, and energy. Or it can be other combination is labor, capital, and materials. Depending on what are your crucial input resources you are using and which you feel that you have to monitor them closely to improve your productivity. For certain materials are for certain companies materials are very costly. For certain other things, energy is very costly. So naturally, you substitute materials with energy or vice versa, depending on which of these input resources are very costly for them, and they want to use those inputs very efficiently.
Sir, what does capital include? Like assets, like machines and all?
Here, capital means it includes the total investment that company has made to realize this output. Say, for example, if you take any public sector company, publicly listed company, so capital will be in two formats. One is debt and another is equity. So equity comes from the shareholders, whereas debt comes from institutional investors like LIC, banking, sometimes even international banks like Citibank. All these lenders will give, or sometimes World Bank, or sometimes even Asian Development Bank kind of stuff. So this capital can come, like again, people even try to measure uh, equity capital productivity, total capital productivity, or debt uh, capital productivity. You can even spread the capital. So here we capital means how much investment you have made. So it is something similar to your return on investment. But anyway, here output can be anything, whether it is in terms of rupee value or in terms of number of units. Like for example, a number of cars that you are producing for a given investment of so much, or it may be number of washing machines that are coming out for a given amount of capital investment, or it may
Can
be
we keep
sales.
output as like something like
Sales also.
publicity
Output
or
can be sales also. Okay. So whatever the output here, numerator and denominator are the units can be different, right? See, actually, the productivity formula is same as efficiency formula also. Efficiency also, it is nothing but output by input. But where is the difference is coming? Where the difference is between productivity and efficiency?
Time factor.
One is time
efficiency is
factor,
unitless.
another is we said in
Efficiency has no
efficiency.
units.
In efficiency, no units okay, but numerator and denominator should be of the same units in efficiency. That's why you end up having no units. But here in productivity, numerator and denominator can be in different units in different format. Okay. So this is so if you take total measure productivity, that means you include all the resources. And here you may be, in this case, you may have to use a what is so called you convert all the resources into a common format, like in terms of some dollars, right? So let us take one example here in the next slide. So here you have a fictitious company where the dollar value of the finished units is $10,000. Work in process inventory is around $1,500. Dividends, how much dividends it is declared for the shareholders. So the total output is 13,500. Whereas input, labor, they have given $3,000. Materials, on materials they have 53. Capital 10,000. Energy 540. Other expenses 1,500. So total input is 15,193. So if you use total productivity, so what is happening? What is the comment on this? Is it productive?
Yes, sir. Productive.
It is not so productive.
No.
Because
Output is less than input.
output is less than the input. So it is not a very productive unit. And here, if you take multi-factor pressures like total output by labor plus material, so 4.28. But is it productive? Means we can't unless we compare with its competitor. We don't know whether it is a productive figure or not. So that's why productivity is always a relative to your competitor, relative to industry standards. So here, say 4.28. Say for example, like you may use this 4.28 to benchmark year-on-year performance. Like for example, if last year you got 4.28, this year you might want to increase it to 5. So you can see like finished units. Here is using units, finished units. Their value is 10,000, and the labor plus material is. So here you are getting labor plus material productivity, and then partial measures can be the like a total output by energy. So for every $1 of energy expenditure, he is getting $25 worth of output. For $1 expenditure on energy, he is getting $25 of worth of goods. Are you getting it? So similarly, energy finished units. So he is getting on the average $18.52 worth of finished units for every $1 investment in the energy. So that is energy productivity. Then labor and material productivity. So that is how like you calculate either you can calculate partial measures, you can say for example energy is very important measure, you go for partial measure. If you think that both labor and material productivity is important for you to benchmark, you can do that, or even total. So this is the examples for what do you call productivity. So tomorrow we will take up some of the partial measures that we use for measuring productivity. So are you able to follow?
Yes, sir.
If you have any doubts, you can we can get cleared tomorrow. All right.
Okay, sir.
Shall I exit?
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Ah.